Very much, Numa. A warm welcome to the 30th seminar of the International PhD in Progress Seminar Series, FA3, organized by the Global South Network. I would like to start by thanking the organizer of this weekly sessions series by Dr. Numa Riyad, lecturer in law, Leicester Law School. Incidentally, my colleague here. So he's the founder and convener of the Global South Network. So my thanks to his incredible energy in running the entire series of the various networks activities. I'm Dr. Ebenezer Adodo, Associate Professor of Commercial Law at the University of Leicester. With the Leicester Law School, my research and teaching interests lie in conflict of laws, international trade, banking, trade finance, and marine insurance. So I've had teaching and research appointments across universities in UK and abroad. Dr. Konstantina is the discussant for today's session. She is Associate Professor of Commercial Law at Leicester Law School. Her research interests lie in commercial and maritime alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. So her current research is focused on the impact of culture in commercial and maritime alternative dispute resolution mechanisms and the increasing use of technology in this process. The research is primarily interdisciplinary in nature. She will be the discussant for today's session. Gabriel Emeasoba is a PhD candidate with the University of Aberdeen. He's a second-year PhD candidate, and his research is focused on aspects of letters of credit, particularly the alignment of UCP provisions with the standard for the valid use of electronic trade documents in LC-based transactions in the MLETR and MSA legislations. He is an editor of the Aberdeen Law Review and a regular contributor to the Comparative Law Yearbook of International Business. He will be the peer commentator for today's session. Finally, Dua Bakdaah is the speaker, is the presenter of a paper on corporate, is the person who will be speaking to us today on corporate shareholder primacy in corporate governance principle on financial market in the Middleeast and North African countries. She is a first-year PhD student at the Leicester Law School. She joined the academia in 2018 as a lecturer in law at the University of Jeddah. Her experience so far has considerably impacted her research. The title of her paper today is The Effect of Adopting the Shareholder Primacy Corporate Governance Principle on the Financial Market Development in the Middleeast and North. Dua will have 30 to 35 minutes for the presentation of her paper. That will be followed by 5 minutes of comments or questions by discussant and peer commentator. Then followed by 15 minutes of questions and answer session by Untitled. I will be chairing this session. So the floor is over to Doa.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Dr. Adodo. Thank you everyone for being here today. I would really like to thank Dr. Norman for organizing this seminar in Global South Network, one of the initiatives of Global South Network. I can see how much this is going to be very beneficial for me, especially regarding your feedbacks and your questions. I can see that because I'm still in initial stage of my research. As a first-year PhD student, I can see how much this is going to help me to refine my work and to enhance my research. So thank you again. Let me start by the title of my research, which is the effects of adopting the shareholder primacy corporate governance principle on the financial market development in the Middle East and North Africa, MENA, from 1995 to 2023. I would really first to explain the content of the research, which is first the importance, then the justifications, the aim of the research, the objectives, the main arguments, research problem, gap in the literature, preliminary findings, and research design, and the contributions of my research. First of all, I want to talk about the importance of the financial markets as it play a crucial role in the economies, companies, and societies. As the financial markets providing platforms where individuals, governments, and companies can raise capital, fund, invest, and manage risks. It's aware to everyone how much the financial markets are important to economies, as financial markets help in facilitating in investment through an efficient allocation of resources. In addition to that, it's very important also for companies, as companies can benefit from the financial markets as they can raise funds for expansion, innovation, operation, and even enhancing their products and the quality of their services through different financial products or through different financial assets such as stocks and bonds. It's also important for societies because financial markets contribute to the wealth creation and job opportunities in addition to the economic growth, and it also play a vital role in wealth distribution and influencing income level and standard of living in any country. But let me first start also by a justification regarding the sample that they choose to study, which is MENA, Middle Eastern and North African country. Why did they choose this specific sample to study and compare between these countries? Firstly, it's very important to highlight that these countries and the MENA region is home to some of the world's largest reserves of oil and natural gas. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and United Arab Emirates are major oil exporters, providing for oil exporters, providing substantial revenue that can be reinvested into economic development. Not only in oil and gas resources, I would also like to mention the tourism sector in MENA countries, which is also very important in MENA countries, as this region boasts rich cultural heritage sites, beautiful landscapes, and modern attractions, countries like Morocco, Egypt, Jordan have developed their tourism sector significantly, contributing to job creation and economic diversification. It's also very important to notify that MENA countries are including many emerging markets, especially in MENA countries. They're considered as emerging markets with high growth potential, attracting investors looking for new opportunities. To catch these opportunities, I think MENA markets are considered one of the best opportunities in some countries of this region. In addition to that, the strategic geographical location also is very important, as the region serves as a critical crossroads between Europe, Asia, and Africa. This strategic location facilitates trade routes and logistics, making it an essential hub for international commerce. In addition to that, I want to highlight also the young population in MENA countries. MENA has a relatively young and growing population, which present opportunity for dynamic labor force. And this advantage in MENA countries can drive innovation and economic growth. In addition to that, it's also very noticeable in between among MENA countries that they are trying to have diversification in their countries, especially regarding, especially in response to the fluctuating of oil prices. Several MENA countries are actively pursuing economic diversification strategies, such as Saudi Arabia with their Vision 2030 and the UAE Economic Vision 2021, which aim to reduce their dependency on oil, promoting sectors such as tourism, technology, and renewable energy. It's also important to notify about the similarities that we're sharing or that MENA countries are sharing. Similarities such as culture, language, being impacted by Islam and Sharia law as a source of law or as a jurisdiction. In addition to that, even the ethical behavior that we're sharing and the investing decisions, the investor choices are mostly the same among MENA countries. In the same time, we're sharing also challenges and obstacles in our financial markets. These obstacles that has affected our financial markets or in MENA financial markets for a long period of time in Middle Eastern and North African countries. Financial markets encounter significant challenges such as fraud, transparency issues, disclosure deficiencies, in addition to exploration by managers and controlling shareholders. There is also one important challenge that we're facing in MENA countries, which is the ownership concentration. Ownership concentration is can indeed pose significant challenge in financial markets in MENA, especially that the ownership is highly concentrated in the hands of families, in addition to the government. So this can lead to issues such as lack of accountability, potential conflicts of interest, and reduced transparency. This concentration of power may limit the influence of other shareholders, especially regarding the asymmetry of information between the inside investors and the outside investors. It's very important. It's very important to know that these challenges can impede market efficiency and integrity, and affecting investor trust and economic development. So it's very important that I think that it's very important to understand the similarities and the challenges in this specific field, in this specific region that we're sharing, even the same problems, the same issues in MENA countries. In addition to that, I wanted to mention that corporate governance is very important in the financial markets and even in the public sectors and even in non-profit organizations, as corporate governance is important as a system to for companies to be directed and controlled, which is going to organize the company procedures and the transitions in the companies between the companies and the investors and the shareholders of this in this company. It's also important to notify that the corporate governance codes in MENA countries are quite newly published. They started publishing their corporate governance codes in Oman in 2002, then Iran and UAE, Dubai International Financial Center in 2004, then in Egypt and Libya in 2005, then Saudi Arabia in 2006, and a lot of countries followed these steps to publish their corporate governance code and even amend these regulations depending on the OECD, the organization standards and policies of corporate governance. It's very important to also to highlight one of the scholars that argued and suggested, his name is Ali Oyer and others, in 2019. He suggested that since the convergence to the OECD principle happened recently, it's early to examine the impact on their economic development. But from my perspective, I believe that early examination can result in significant theoretical and empirical data insights in MENA countries that are fundamental in understand how corporate governance in MENA is evolving in relation to their economic outcomes, such as financial market development, to fill the knowledge gap and population gap. So from this perspective, I started my interest in this specific field in corporate governance, and I started studying more and learning more about the different models of corporate governance around the world, such as the Anglo-Saxon model and the European continental model, and even the Asia-Pacific model, and I saw that there are many characteristics for each model around the world. And these differences is basically based on different reasons, such as culture differences, different jurisdictions, in addition to even being impacted by a religion or by characteristics of the society. So it's very important to understand that there is no single corporate governance that can fit all countries around the world. There is no single corporate governance system that can fit all countries around the world due to these differences. In addition to that, that's what I wanted to avoid in my research, because I've been asked many times, why am I studying MENA countries? Why am I not comparing between MENA countries and one of the best financial or the strongest financial markets around the world? Is because these differences, because I know that if I compare between them, this comparison is not going to be fair, especially regarding the differences in huge differences between these two countries, or in their culture or in their ethical behavior. So I wanted to focus in my study on a group of countries that share similar culture and cultural and religious background, so I can establish a solid foundation of my research considering the nuance of corporate governance within a specific regional context. I know that this strategy can facilitate the adoption of best practices in corporate governance among countries with weaker regulations, as they can learn from the successful outcomes of their regional counterparts. This targeted research method will not only enhance the understanding and applicability of corporate governance practices, but it will also create a more seamless transition for governments, companies, and local investors in adopting and applying these practices that have proven their successful impacts on financial markets of countries that we're sharing many similarities with. Let me also explain more about the period span that I'm studying. I know that the period span is quite long, and I have been also criticized for taking this long period or studying this long period, but it's very important to understand this. The analysis of this long period will allow to capture all necessary changes to corporate governance models over time in the region. This first corporate governance long study in MENA will provide a comprehensive insights of how the adoption of shareholder primacy model is impacting their financial markets in the long term. And it's very important to highlight this specific term, which is the long term, is very important in my research, because this will provide a nuanced data. It will add more credibility to my research results, to avoid the flaws and incredibility in the provided data and results of examining a short period of time, which in turn could negatively affect the accuracy of the results. I would also like to define more about the shareholder primacy model. The shareholder primacy model is basically a model that is concerned about shareholders on the first place. In this specific model, prioritizing shareholder is the main concern, let me say, for this specific model. By the end of the 20th century, there was a widespread agreement in the American business community that corporations should be governed based on the shareholder primacy model. The Milton Friedman Doctorian in 1970 pointed out that corporations are owned by their shareholders, and that directors and executives should mainly act in their best interest, the interest of the shareholders. Generally, in this theory, the company's social responsibility is determined by focusing on maximizing share value for the shareholders, which measured by the company's share price and its return, because shareholders are the only stakeholder group for which the company is socially responsible. I know that was criticized by many scholars after that, and it was linked to many financial crises, and many countries now are trying to avoid shareholder primacy model. But at the same time, the previous literature did not study the impact of this specific model in MENA countries. Maybe they included one or two countries on the research, but the results of their research cannot be generalized on MENA countries. So for that reason, I had my interest in studying the impact of this specific model, because, as I mentioned earlier, there is no single corporate governance system that can fit all countries around the world. So maybe prioritizing shareholder in some way, or maybe protecting shareholder rights in some way would enhance the financial markets in many countries. I still have no data to prove that. I'm still in initial stage, as I mentioned earlier, but this is what I'm aiming to do in my research. So the aim of my research is to quantitatively analyze whether the adoption of the shareholder-oriented model of corporate governance had any impact on the financial market growth in MENA country. The objectives of my research is basically first to determine if MENA economies are moving towards a shareholder primacy model by analyzing corporate governance regulations and applications thoroughly during the study period. To investigate whether the corporate governance model suggested by the OECD have actually been adopted and applied in many countries, and if it played a significant role in the growth of financial markets in MENA economies. To analyze and compare corporate governance laws and regulations to determine the level of protection for shareholder rights in each country in the region separately. And this is also an important objective of my research, and I consider it as a contribution of my in my research, because this will provide an information and comprehensive picture and full picture about to what extent countries in MENA region are protecting their shareholders. Okay, so I think this will provide data, information to investors around the world to evaluate their investing in many countries. If they want to invest, they can invest in a countries based on the information that I will provide in my research. In addition to that, it's very important to deliver general and comprehensive insight about the corporate governance landscape in many countries, and it's also important to assess the impacts of converging or adopting shareholder primacy model on their financial markets. The main arguments is the adoption of the shareholder primacy model in corporate governance laws and regulations in many countries has positively affected the growth and stability of the financial market by boosting investors' trust in the market. This led to an increase in funding from both local and foreign investors, increasing the flow of investment, which contributed to the market's value and overall development. In the literature, I have seen many articles that studied the impact of this specific model. In some of these literature, they have proved that this specific model has a positive impact on the financial market growth, especially regarding enhancing the trust of local investors and attracting foreign investments to these financial markets, which in turn enhanced the development of the financial markets in these countries. In another articles, or let's say recent articles that study the impact of the shareholder model, maybe they have proven different results regarding the adoption of the shareholder primacy model, and some of these articles found a detrimental impact that was linked, as I told you, to many financial crises around the world and many companies' failures around the world. In other articles, they found that there is no significant impact on the financial market, and there are other corporate governance models that could impact the financial markets positively more than the shareholder primacy model. But as I mentioned earlier, all of these articles did not focus on the MENA region. They focused on USA, UK, and countries around the world. Maybe they included one or two countries of MENA region, but their results cannot be generalized on the region itself. In addition to that, the research problem is to study the effect of converging to the shareholder primacy model in the financial markets in the MENA region. This will help to identify the best corporate governance practices in these emerging economies, while scholars have analyzed the influence of this model on various countries globally and shared their outcomes. There isn't a single article that focuses only on studying the impacts in MENA countries at a regional level and comparing between them. The gap in the literature is also very important and significant in my research, especially regarding the knowledge. As I mentioned earlier, many countries are affected by unique factors and share many similarities. The previous global literature results on the adoption of the shareholder primacy model cannot be generalized and applied to them. Therefore, it's necessary to fill the knowledge gap and provide new insights into the most efficient and suitable corporate governance model in the MENA region. In addition to that, the gap also it will be in my methodology that I'm going to utilize in my research, which is comparative empirical quantitative method, as this methodology is not commonly employed by legal scholars in MENA region, which will offer a fresh perspective and contribute to advancing legal research in specific in the region. As I am originally from one of the MENA countries, I can assure you that we prefer to use doctrinal model or doctrinal methodology more than empirical quantitative method. Maybe it's they use it more in business college or in management, but in legal field in MENA countries we don't use it a lot. We have lack of research that using quantitative methods, so I think this will add to the legal research field, and I think that the future research will I hope that the future researchers will follow this step to utilize the same method. The primary findings, it's also very important, but as I'm still in my first year, I didn't have the chance to collect the data. So this I prefer to talk about or to speak about the research design. So this research will utilize a quantitative research method to analyze whether the convergence to shareholder model, corporate governance in many countries, including Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, Yemen, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, territories of Palestine, Iraq, Egypt, Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Sudan, and Iran has affected financial market growth for about 30 years from 1995 to 2023. The research will be conducted in a number of steps. Firstly, a questionnaire will be created and distributed to local experts. These experts, I'm planning to ask. I'm planning to find these participants in financial market authorities in these countries to help me in filling these questionnaires and surveys in MENA region to answer questions regarding adopting the shareholder model and how it's impacting their financial market. Secondly, if necessary, the researcher will provide comments on unclear and crucial aspects of regulations. Thirdly, after completion of the questionnaire, all the gathered data will be turned into numbers, and a multiple linear regression method will be utilized to analyze these data. The variables that I'm going to utilize is the dependent variables, and which is the financial market growth. I will use variables such as new listed companies, the number of listed companies, and new IPOs, in addition to in addition to the IBOs is the most important. I'm still thinking about the dependent variables that I'm going to use. I didn't choose them all, but in initial stage, I would say that the number of the listed companies and the IBOs, and even the trade value, the stock trade in MENA countries would definitely give me and indicate to me how much this financial market is growing in these countries. In addition to that, I will also use independent variables, which is going to measure the adoption of the shareholder primacy model, such as the voting techniques, the ability to join the meetings, the ability to sue the board of directors and the managers of the company. A lot of indicators that would indicate to adoption of the shareholder primacy model in MENA countries. I will use also control variables, that are the factors that could influence the financial market growth in my research, to avoid and eliminate their impact on the financial market, such as tax evasion and oil and gas prices, because oil and gas prices have affected the financial markets in MENA region for many times. So I will definitely control these variables to eliminate their impact on the financial markets. The data analysis, it will be yes.
Time, please.
Okay, I will have only 2 minutes, not more than that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the data analysis, I will use the multiple linear regression analysis. It will allow for examining the relationship between multiple independent variables and multiple dependent variables, control for potential confounding variables that may influence the relationship between shareholder primacy model and financial market growth. It will also allow me for the estimation of the strength of the direction and direction of relationship between the variables. It will help me also to assess the statistical significance of the relationship between the variables. Lastly, the contributions, empirical data provided, especially after collecting the data from these countries. It will be very helpful for future researchers to base their research on the data that I'm going to collect, which is going to be nuanced data, because it will cover hard law and soft laws in MENA countries. Also methodological regarding the quantitative method that I'm going to utilize. And as I told you, it's quite rare to use in MENA countries. The knowledge, which is the most important thing in the impact of the adopting this specific model in MENA countries. And definitely I will provide recommendations to policymakers to enhance their regulations regarding corporate governance models, and to practitioners to apply the best practices in their companies. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed my research, my presentation, and I want to hear your feedbacks and questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your great presentation. That's very helpful. And I'm sure that it will trigger interest among the attendees and participants in this session. So you'll be having the questions shortly. But first, I would like to invite Dr. Konstantina Sampani, my colleague, who is the discussant.
Thank you very much. Many thanks, first of all, to Dr. Rayet for giving us this opportunity to discuss about DUA's ongoing research project. Many thanks to the chair for the kind introductions, and to DUA, of course, for such an insightful presentation. Dua, your presentation indeed shows clarity. It demonstrates your enthusiasm in working on this topic, and it was very well structured, especially considering that you are more at the earlier stages of your PhD study. I thought it was very interesting. I would like to start with my first question about the differences and similarities that you may have identified in MENA countries about your topic, and differences and similarities that have not yet been discussed in the existing literature. And how do you think that your findings on this matter are going to benefit other countries of the Global South and also of the Global North?
Definitely. From my research, I just want to prove one single fact, that there is no corporate governance model that can fit all countries around the world. Adopting from USA, adopting the model that is used in Western countries maybe is not beneficial for this country. Maybe it's detrimental for their countries, and it's not going to influence their financial market positively. So this is the general aiming of my research, because I want to prove that this specific, any specific region or any country could have their own practices of corporate governance that will ensure the protection of the shareholders, that will ensure the stakeholder, other stakeholders' rights in their countries.
Thank you. My second question / comment is to challenge a little bit the actual focus of the thesis. The reason for this being that, as you mentioned in your presentation, there have been counter arguments in relation to focusing on shareholder primacy. So I'm thinking whether you have considered these arguments or aspects of these arguments, and whether indeed focusing purely on shareholder primacy may impact positively to financial growth in the jurisdictions in the countries you are examining, but at the same time generate adverse impacts on various other stakeholders, whether this is the communities, the society, adverse ecological impact, etc., which may be worth considering, especially since your focus, as I understand, relates to a group of countries that would classify as Global South, if I am right in using this term. So yeah, over to you.
Okay, first of all, I want to clarify that I'm not supporting shareholder primacy model at all. It's only an interesting model that must be examined in this specific area of the world. In addition to that, I'm also aware about the rights of other stakeholders that must be also covered, and that it's very important to consider it. But at the same time, the questionnaire that I'm going to build, I did it yet, but the questionnaire that I'm going to build, I'm thinking that I want to build flexible questionnaire that is going to detect if the countries are adopting other models of corporate governance. So if they're not adopting shareholder primacy model, then they're adopting other models, and it will detect what is exactly the other models that they are adopting, and it will clarify if these other models is impacting the financial markets growth. So for this reason, I know that the main focus is in this specific model, but I'm also aware about the benefits that we could have, that MENA markets and MENA countries could have from adopting other models. So that's my notion, and this is what I want. This is what I'm aiming in my research.
Lovely, thank you. I have a further question in relation to your choice of methodology. And we very clearly understood what your methodological tools are going to be. You explained this to us very clearly. I wonder whether you see any challenges in relation to accessing relevant data and how you're going to collect this reliable data. And also you mentioned quite a substantial number of local experts, which I understand you're going to interview. So I was wondering how you would choose, what would be your criteria in selecting the sample size, and what are going to be your criteria in selecting these particular local experts? What features these local experts, your interviewees, are going to have, and what value this selection is going to add to your own thesis as well as the general literature.
Okay. First of all, I want to highlight that the period span that I choose is from 1995 to 2023. I choose it for a reason, which is the availability of the data from 1995. In addition to that, in the criteria of choosing the participants, they must be legal experts in the field of corporate governance, and I would really like to distribute this questionnaire to an expert, especially legal experts, especially in the authorities of the financial markets in these countries. If I didn't find any answer from the financial authorities, I will definitely move to academics who are interested in this specific field and have published many articles in this specific field, especially legal scholars, because they will know more about the adoption of the shareholder model, of the shareholder primacy model, regarding the hard laws and even the soft laws as case laws and norms of businesses and of companies. So that's why this is the way I will choose them, and I will definitely discuss this more with my supervisor in the next step. But this is the initial idea about how am I going to contact them and how am I going to collect the data through these participants.
Okay, that's great. And it sounds like quite an ambitious and, in its width and selection of methodology or of methodological tools, and that's great. But I was wondering whether you envisage any challenges in that, and if so, how are you going to deal with these challenges?
Okay. And regarding to the challenges, I know that some countries in MENA region are in conflict now, and maybe this could limitate some of the data of my results. But I will try to collect the data through the period that these countries were in a stable situation, to even provide provide recommendations to them, because I don't think that these conflicts will stay forever. I know that in one day everything will be fine and we will live in peace. But definitely I'm going to study the period where they were in a stable situation, to collect the data through these years, and I will see the results of the specific periods.
I understand that you mentioned that the data becomes available since 1995, but other than taking the pragmatic approach in relation to the selection of this period of time, is there anything that is significant that went on during these 30 decades that also justifies the study of that period of time?
I think that there are many incidents that happened during these 30 years, and I will definitely explain them thoroughly in my research. I would really mention one of these incidents that happened in Saudi Arabia in 2006, I think. This incident in financial markets in financial market in Saudi Arabia have changed many regulations and have changed many laws regarding corporate governance and financial authority supervision of companies in Saudi Arabia, listed companies in Saudi Arabia. Many investors, local investors, have invested money in a huge amount of money in the financial markets because at that time the oil prices were significantly high, and the country invested in the financial markets. So the price of the shares have significantly raised. So everyone wanted to invest in the financial markets without even any knowledge of investing in the financial markets. But suddenly, after I can't remember exactly how many months, the financial markets dropped dramatically during from I think 20,000 points to 10,000 points, something like that. But it was detrimental incident in Saudi Arabia, and a lot of people lose their jobs, and some people resigned because they thought that the financial market will provide them the financial funding forever. But it was a lesson for everyone in Saudi Arabia at that time. Yeah. So this is one of the incidents. I'm sure that even other MENA countries also have the same incidents. I will definitely explain them more in my research.
Thanks, Dua. Thanks, Konstantina.
Thank you very much, Dua. I appreciate all the answers.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and very best of luck with your thesis.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'm hopeful that that we find that very very helpful. You're more or less like a mini Viva. When you eventually have your Viva at the end of your journey, I'm sure you remember her engagement with you and realize that it was very helpful, really. Yeah, thank you very much. So I would now like to invite Gabriel Emeasoba, who is the peer commentator, to offer his views, to share his views on the presentation. Yes,
thank you very much.
Gabriel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Newman, Dr. Bayan, and Dr. Konstantina. And congratulations on your wonderful presentation, Dua. It was well thought out. It was also well presented. And there are so many good things to see in your presentation, also as it is coming at a very early stage of your research. I like the fact that you are researching in an original area regarding the connection of corporate governance and its effect, positive effect on the financial market. But also, I also like the fact that you are bringing in tools like regression analysis to look at the adequacy of the shareholder model of corporate governance. The truth about it is that you've done a very good job, but I have a few comments. The very first comment I want to make relates to the comment that Dr. Konstantina made about looking at your choice of the shareholder model once more. There is nothing wrong with the choice of a model to look at. But one thing about academic research is that it deals with a lot of justifications. You have to say, this is why I'm doing this. I know that there are things like this, but this is why I am doing this. And in doing this, especially in this context, it is important that you look at developments. I know you don't want to compare developments in the world, in the West, with what you have in MENA countries. But also these are important because they show you the global trends. Because if you look at the global trends right now, there is a shift from shareholder capitalism to, even if it is still a shareholder primacy model, but a kind of attenuated model where other interests are taken into consideration. And I think that one of the ways through which you can do this in your work might be, first of all, making a provision for theoretical framework. I noticed that there is no provision in your work for theoretical framework. And I think that the area of corporate governance is an area that already has established theoretical theories, founding the discussions you are making. Theories like agency theory, theories like stakeholder theory, and all these theories, transaction cost theory, it may be helpful. For example, it may be helpful in letting you understand the limitations of the shareholder primacy theory. It may be helpful in letting you understand the different variations, so that when you talk about shareholder primacy model, you know the variation of shareholder primacy model that you want to adopt. Is it the one that is an extreme type that only cares about the welfare of the shareholder, discarding other welfare interests in the firm? Or is it the type of shareholder primacy that one sees, for example, in Section 172 of the Companies Act of the UK, that also thinks about the other interests? So this may be wonderful if you think about theoretical framework. That's my first comment. Now, the second comment, or that may elicit a question, regards your methodology. I love the methodological approaches you chose. I was wondering why you did not include the doctrinal method. I listened to what you said in your presentation, but thinking about the fact that you will consider hard and soft laws from MENA countries, if you are analyzing primary legislation and all these regulations, perhaps doctrinal methodology may be involved. It doesn't discard the value in involving other methodologies, but maybe you can also include it. That's just a suggestion. The next thing I want to say is that where you were talking about the aim of your research, you talked about protecting shareholder rights. And I was wondering, when I was reading through your slides, which shareholder do you mean? First of all, which type of company are we even talking about? Are we talking about private companies? Are we talking about public companies? Which shareholder are you talking about? Are we talking about minority shareholders? Are you talking about majority shareholders? Because we know that in modern times, with the emergence of institutional shareholders, these big investors in today's world have different ways through which they protect their interests and protect their rights, and they exert enormous pressure on corporate boards. So what do you mean by protecting shareholder rights, and which type of company are you referring to? If you want, you can react to that before I continue.
Okay, I'm talking here about the listed companies in general, if it's public or private company, because some of the public companies are listed in many countries, and private companies are also listed. So I'm only concerning about the companies listed in the financial markets. In regard to your second point, I would definitely maybe I didn't mention all the variables that I'm going to utilize in my questionnaire, but definitely a part of my questionnaire will be focusing on minority shareholders. I know that the general I will ask general questions about shareholders in general, but at the same time I will include an index about minority shareholder rights and their ability to, for example, their ability to vote, their ability to sue the directors. So all of these rights will be also included in my research. Even the minority shareholders will be covered in my questionnaire.
Okay, the next thing I want to just touch on is the fact that you mentioned in your control variable that you will consider other factors that have influenced the financial markets in the MENA countries. And this is very interesting to me, because when I was reading your work, I was thinking, well, is it just the shareholder primacy model that has had a positive effect on the financial markets in these areas? So I was wondering whether you thought about any means of measuring the extent of the shareholder primacy model, the extent of its effect on the financial markets in these areas and the extent of the effects of these other factors? How do you measure the extent of the effects of each of these factors within your research?
Actually, to eliminate the control variables and the factors that could be impacted the financial markets in MENA region, I will definitely use that through the multiple linear regression. These factors will be measured maybe through international organization. It was measured. Maybe I will measure it myself and how it's impacting the financial markets, and this will be eliminated through the multiple linear regression. I am still in initial stage. I don't think that I'm yet explored in this specific in analyzing the data and how am I going to eliminate these specific variables. But definitely I will reach to that point, and I will tell you in the next seminar.
Okay, finally, my final comments. I was looking at the aims of the work, and I do understand that you said that you are not yet sure how it will end. Mm-hmm. So, but I was asking myself, so what do you hope to achieve? And I'm asking, are you trying to recommend for the MENA countries the adoption of the shareholder primacy model? Is that the overall aim of the research? And I'm asking, if it is, do you think, because I saw where you wrote something about recommendation to policymakers, considering the fact that there are so many countries within the MENA region, do you think that policymakers in these different countries will be willing to adopt one singular model of shareholder primacy, thinking about the fact that these different countries may have their policy priorities beyond the shareholder primacy model? Okay,
I would really like to say that, as you mentioned, I don't know how it's going to end, if the shareholder primacy model has a positive or negative impact, or maybe it wasn't even adopted in many countries. So I don't know yet what are the results that I'm going to reach. Depending on these results, my recommendations will be established, and I will know how I'm going to formulate my recommendations to countries in MENA region, because maybe the countries will show many similarities even regarding the adoption of the shareholder primacy model, which will be easier for me to comment and suggest on this base. But in another aspect, maybe they will have different impact if they adopted the shareholder primacy model. So everything will be based on the data that I'm going to collect, and the recommendations that I'm going to provide, it will be general. Recommendations, also based on the results of the data. It will not go in deep of the corporate governance practices. I will leave it to the countries to decide it, but definitely I will advise them to follow. For example, I will advise them to protect their shareholders more if they didn't protect their shareholders the way it was. And definitely, I will follow all the international standards by the OECD regarding this specific issue. But at the same time, I have to, after recognizing the results of the data, I will collect.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best. I just want to add a little advice. As a fellow student, fellow PhD candidate, I remember the last time that I came here to present my work, so many of the scholars also made their input into what I was writing. So it will be important when you get home as well to think about how to bring, because these things will give you direction as you read more. Sure. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. That's very helpful. Thank you. I'm sure that this members of the participants, members of the audience.
Okay.
Maybe some participants who have some questions, some comments.
Yes, I think there are some comments in the chat box.
Yeah.
And
I will just want to shortly, but I wanted to see whether there's somebody raising up any hand. Okay, so let me turn to the chat box now. You have got first is a kind of suggestion that instead of referring to your work, my research, there is a suggestion that you should probably depersonalize it and use probably the third person to say the research or the study. Probably you want to respond to that quickly.
Sorry, who is answer? Who is?
There's this comment here. It's a kind of it's just simply a suggestion that you shouldn't be saying my research. Instead, you should say the studies.
Okay.
So, but I wanted to ask you to respond to that, if possible. The general, you want to respond to that quickly?
I will take his or her suggestion into consideration, definitely.
Okay. It's just a part of the traditional approach to scholarship.
Yes.
There are views, it's not entirely universal. There are views about this, where the mainstream approach is you try to remove that remove your person from it and be using the research, the study, and all of that. But there are others, who appear to have adopted, the first person approach by saying, in my view. But there are others who will say it is submitted instead of saying I submit, or instead of saying I suggest that this should be adopted. Some would prefer that you say it is subjected. It is suggested that this should be done, or it is proposed that this is to be done, or it is intended to deal with this, and that. So it's all about the one you prefer. But at this early stage, I would suggest you follow the mainstream, which is what the Mensa appears to have suggested by saying the study. I came across something similar many years ago, until eventually I found Professor Wright, who is now Emeritus Professor of Law in Australia, who was always saying, in my view. I said, if this man is saying in my view, then why should I, and somebody else not say in my view? Does somebody, of course, challenge me on that and say, well, he is an authority. So, whereas you are not yet authority. You are just in the early stage of your research.
May I, sorry for the interruption, but in the interest of time and best learning experience of all who are attending, may I suggest if we can wind up the session?
Yes. No, there is, okay. Any further question here?
I mean, she can always reach out to Gifty. So Gifty is one of PhD candidates at the School of Business, University of Leicester. She is a very regular and active member of the Global South Network. You can always reach out to her directly, and she might be very helpful in giving you further feedback. So the comment is there, and you can read that comment later on.
That is okay. So no further question from members of the audience. No further question. With that, we are grateful to everyone for at least attending the session. We're grateful to Konstantina for the excellent discussion she provided on the presentation, and then to Gabriel for the very insightful comments and suggestions and directions he suggested. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look after yourself. Have a great day. See you next week.
See you. And all the very best with your research.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for your feedback.
Have a nice day.
Yeah.